Go ahead.
So today I want to talk about why restaurants should be required to post nutrition information on menus. And if you're like most Americans, you eat out frequently, and if you're like me, you probably, when you go out and eat, you probably eat a lot of junk food. Not because it's necessarily, we know that it's bad for us, but intuitively, but we don't necessarily see just how bad the food is that we eat on the menu. So how many people have had a sandwich like this in the last couple of weeks? I know I eat out all the time, and I call this the heart attack sandwich. Or a side order of stroke fries, right? These are just cheese fries that most restaurants sell. And they're great, right? They taste good, but they're contributing to the obesity epidemic in America. And so, for instance, Red Lobster has what they call the Admiral's Feast, and it has 3.1 teaspoons of salt in it, okay, just one meal. Dickey's Barbecue Pit 3-meat plate has 8 days of saturated fat, and it would take you 5 hours to burn that off. 5 hours, okay, one meal. Next. If you knew this, would you think twice before ordering? Well, there's some interesting research about something called the 20-second rule that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But research has shown that when people know what they're eating, they make better choices, they feel better, and they will prolong their life. So, number one, consumers want to know. Again, this is all research-based. Consumers want to know what the nutrition content is of what they eat. And not only do they want to know what they're eating, but they want to know quickly, okay? And so there was a study done on what is called the 20-second rule. Have any of you heard about this? So the 20-second rule basically states that anything that takes more than 20 seconds to do, most Americans won't do it. So for instance, how many of you have signed up for something that's subscription-based where you pay monthly? So it might be a gym membership or a subscription to a magazine or a newspaper. And you haven't read that magazine or that newspaper for months, but yet you don't cancel it because it takes longer than 20 seconds. Okay, so gyms know this, and that's why gym memberships are based on a monthly recurring fee. Well, the 20-second rule also applies to what we eat. So the solution is to lower the barriers to activation. So part of this study entailed, for instance, placing a treadmill in a bedroom. Okay, and what the study found was if a treadmill is in a bedroom, people will exercise. So a lot of people put their treadmill, for instance, in a basement, and it just sits there and it ends up being a clothes hanger. But if it's right next to your bed and you get up and you see it, you have a much better chance of exercising. So that's the 20-second rule. So lower the barriers to activation. Well, how do you do that? You do that by posting the content of the food, the nutritional content on the menu and not on the corporate website. You see, companies, and especially franchises and big corporations, they think that if the nutritional content is posted on the menu, that people will spend less. But what the studies have found is that's not the case at all. In fact, posting calorie counts on menus has a big impact on choices that people make, but no impact on sales whatsoever. So it's a myth that companies will lose money if they eat better. In fact, studies have shown that they might actually spend more. So the percentage of Americans that support menu labeling, does anyone want to take a guess? That's a great choice. I wish I had, a gift for it, right? So go ahead. 78% is the number. It's a high number. We all want it. We all want to know what we're eating. And if we know, and if we see that the Admiral's Feast has 3.1 teaspoons of salt, we might choose better. We might not necessarily spend less, but we'll choose better. In fact, nutrition labeling not that long ago became mandatory on packaged products. So I don't know if any of you here in the audience are old enough to remember when they didn't have to report calories and fat and nutritional content on food items, but when it became mandatory, existing products were reformulated to be more nutritious. Now, do you think that that had an impact on sales? Not at all. Not at all. But it did force companies to actually reformulate what they were selling to be more healthy. So it's just common sense, and it's good practice, and it can actually help sales. So the solution is to make it mandatory. And the only way to make it mandatory is to obviously make it the law. So I believe that it should be the law that menus report nutrition on the menus clearly and in large letters. So imagine going out to eat and improving your health at the same time. Now, my family, when we eat a lot. And if any of you come from families that the holidays are all about eating a lot of food and going out to eat means gorging yourself, it's just tradition. It's part of our culture. But if the menus reflect what we're eating, now it doesn't necessarily mean that the Admiral's Feast is going to say 3.1 teaspoons of fat. We still might have to do a little bit of mental math to figure out what it means in milligrams, right? But we'll make better choices perhaps, right? So we can actually improve our health while dining out. And it's not a pipe dream, it's something we can